we usually want to take too big of a step. It's like we're trying to step off a 10-story building when we just really need to step off a curb. And that's usually the piece of the puzzle. You give people, you say, well, I want to have X. Okay, well, what is the first step? And if we can label the first step, it takes away the fear, it takes away all these things that are in our mind are telling us why this is impossible because we've never done it before. So how in your mind could it be possible if you've never done it before? But if we say, a simple part, I want to lose 20 pounds, I want to make $1 million, right? I want to go write a book. Okay, well, what is that first step? What is that first step we can do right now? Because not only does it break the pattern of you telling yourself you can, but it also starts to get you momentum. But it now gives you the questions to ask to get you to the next step. All right, so welcome back to the Live 100 podcast. I'm Jason Yarusi. I am super excited to bring you today's podcast with my friend David. I was able to join him on his Manage to Win podcast just the other week. We really dove into how to build a life that you could truly be proud of. So take a listen, dive in today. Let's do this.
Welcome back to the Manage to Win podcast. We're here today with Jason Yarusi. Now, he owns thousands of apartment units, but that's not what this talk's about. This talk is about Live 100. He's got a program that can help you break, build, and magnify your life wherever you want to go, whatever you want to do. And he dives in. There's a lot of energy here, a lot of good points. He's got some free stuff on his website you can get. But I just think it's a great conversation that can make you think about some things that maybe are hiding in the background that you need to focus on more. Let's dive in. Jason, thank you very much for being on the show. When I go to your website, there's a lot of stuff that you put out there. But when I go to the website, it says break, build, magnify. And I know I looked at it on the website, but I want to hear from you because I think everybody's out there is broken in some way. Most of us don't realize it. I'm older, so it finally hit me in my 50s. But when you talk about break, build, magnify, I just looked at it and like, wow, that could be really powerful. And I thought that might be a great place to start.
David, thank you so much for having me on the show. And break, build, magnify are the foundational blocks for the Live 100 program that I help other people really just get out of their own way. And many times in life, we don't realize it because we're moving so fast, right? We think of everything that's happening today. You think about all the technology all in front of us, how much information is created each and every day, all the talks about AI and just how that's going to assist you move on. And all you have is just pile on top and top and on top of just all this different activity and busy and noise. Yet the majority of us, right, and many of us, we're not fulfilled, right? We go through 98% of our day making subconscious choices we don't realize we're making, right? 2% of it we're actually paying attention to, and we're almost on autopilot. And so what happens in life is that if you're not happy with the results you're getting, well, we don't get back to the core principles. Well, what am I doing each and every day to get to the results I'm having? And we keep saying, hitting our head against the wall, saying, man, I'm not happy with my results. But then we look back at it, and if we're truly self-aware about how we're showing up, well, we're doing chaotic things. And then we're surprised that we're not getting great results. And when I look back at it, right, so the question started with the Live 100 program is that I was getting a lot of questions. How did you get from A to B, right? And on that part, A to B is really A to Z because there's all the other letters in between, right? But it looks like A to B because when you look at it, I was in this part, I had a lot of things that were going against me. I had a lot of just points in my life that were really down, and I broke a pattern, and then lo and behold, was able to transform to get great success today. But in the middle is all the activity. So I left school, right, after having a lot of loss in my formative years, right? Going through, middle school and high school, I just had all this loss. Now, I wasn't in the military. We didn't live in a war zone yet. I had friends die from a boating accident, suicide, a car accident, drugs, and all these things that just put me in this really down state. And here I am. I go to college, really lost, dejected, just not really confident in my own light. My parents were, great parents, still together today, but they were struggling in their own point. So I just had a lot of just like weight on my shoulders. And I get through college, with a finance degree, had no desire to really do anything with that. And I moved to New York City and I start working in bars and restaurants, just doing all these odd jobs, but nothing fulfilling. Just what do I need to do today just to get to tomorrow? And with my life in that pattern, I wasn't happy. Shockingly wasn't happy. And so with that rotation, you start, drinking at night, doing things that just aren't conforming to anything that's going to be a successful path forward. One night I'll leave.
Let me ask you, Jason, I hate to interrupt your rhythm, but you got so much energy. I know you can pick that rhythm back right up.
100%. Yeah.
But so you had the high school, you had some real challenges. You went into college. What motivated you to get through each day? I use the same point A to point B metaphor. What was that motivation that got you up in the morning that made you do the next thing?
Sometimes you latch onto things that are going well, and then they're the things that hold you together. So I love working out, love fitness, right? So that was something I kept really active in. I kept working out, right? It was something like that was the driver. But lots of times we can't see the path forward to use what's successful in one area in other areas, right? So you'll see many people that are really good in one space, but then horrible in all the others because they're not using the same principles that they do, repetitive, consistent, formulated, tracked, right? All the things that you can do in one area. So you can relay that into anything. You can relay that into your fitness. You can relay that into your faith. You can relay that into your family. You can relay that into your finances, right? If you're not constantly showing up in some consistent pattern, and then you're saying, well, why this isn't going right? But in these other areas, like you have more energy, so you see that actually happening and show up. So I had things like working out, things that kept me motivated, energized, but honestly, you can still be lost in that same moment, right? But you get into this pattern where even if you're doing something good, you just get stuck in a pattern. And with how fast the days move, like I was just in this pattern. And you don't know how to break the pattern until you break the pattern. When I left college, I had done this pattern where I picked a major, really. I had a girlfriend at the time. Her mom was like, you're good at numbers. Why don't you do business? That was like how formulated my decisions were at like going out there and like choosing a path forward, right? I was like, yeah, okay, that kind of makes sense because I had to choose a major. Well, and then working in bars, it was just the thing that came next. And, you know, when things come next, when you're really not setting up to have any direction forward, right? What's your North Star, right? What's the lighthouse you're going after? Like, where are you going, right? And when you don't have a path of what you're going after, well, things just come next, whether you want them to or not. And sometimes we're trying to, not make a next decision because we don't want things to go wrong, or not make a next decision because we don't really have confidence in ourselves. And I was kind of stuck in that own realm of both. Like, I didn't really have confidence in anything. And many times I felt like a lot of things that I had were just like kind of taken away without my control. The things that were like sick family members, there was just a lot of stuff happening. And when so much happens and you're just like, okay, what's next? You're kind of trying to just hold on like a broken vase, right? You're trying to hold it together just so it doesn't crack anymore, but it's still cracked, right? But you're just thinking, well, if I just hold it together tight enough, it just won't completely fall apart. But that's not a good way to go after life. But that's how we treat our lives. We treat them in this like fragile aspect that if you just squeeze tight enough, everything can just stay together. And so I was just broken state of just not really happy with where I was, but confused on how to get to that next stage. And so one night I leave the bar, I'm just, mad with just my choices, where I am, just like, I'm just mad at anything, right? You put something in front of me, I'd be mad at it. I'd be mad at the tree if it was in front of me. And get on a bike and I ride across Manhattan, and out of nowhere, randomly, I get hit by a car. It's like 2 a.m. and some guy just like cuts across the street, doesn't see me, and I fly up in the air. Next thing I know, I'm taken to the hospital. I get a pin in my wrist, a broken shoulder, a bunch of stitches, and I get out of the hospital the next day, and all I'm thinking is like, man, I need to just figure out how to go back to work because I need to make money to make rent. And it was just that crazy pause where it wasn't the change of everything, but I just said, okay, listen, I'm mad at everything I have right now. Yet all I'm doing after this is trying to go back to exactly where I am. And that's fine. But if I'm going to do that, then I have to stop complaining, stop just whining about everything, and just realize I'm making crazy choices and I'm getting crazy results.
Can we sit there for a moment?
Sure.
You talk about being mad. What have you learned about that as you've reflected back on that and worked through that? And you can choose what you want to share and what you
Sure.
don't want to share. But where was the anger coming from?
It was I'll take this, I'm 50% Italian, right? So that gives me that first layer, right, of the part. But honestly, mad is not having clear decisions and not taking responsibility. And so that puts a lot of blame outwards instead of just saying that ultimately I'm in control of what I can do. And then I really can truly only be in control of how I'm reacting. And right now I'm just acting like a wild man, right? If your whole day is out of control, then no matter if things are a level 10 or a level 1 in terms on the emergency list, everything feels like an emergency because all you're doing is feeling out of control and surprised by everything that's coming next. And that's a hard place to be, right? I see people today that, they're at in code red at all points, and everything that happens all day just feels like it's extreme because they're not in anywhere control of just their mindset, right? Their feelings, their emotions. And when that happens, things really feel like they're just coming down on you one after the other.
Interesting. And do you find that with a lot of people or some people that this code red is not on the surface, but that hair trigger's there.
Yeah.
And if they get tricked, if they get hit, then boom, it flares up.
You don't always see it on people. There's some people that just don't hide emotions at all, but there's many people that can hide everything well, but it doesn't mean that everything's going well. And I usually find that if there's no base built, right, that's why I get back to the foundational principles. So that the break block, it truly is built on 3 principles, right? One is being self-aware. Next is owning where you are. And the next is positioning yourself for greatness. Because usually, if you do this exercise, right, if you were sitting right here in the seat you are right now, and you had an out-of-body experience and your same self is watching you all day, what would they think? What would they think? How are you acting all day? Are you acting in accordance with your values, right? With your vision, with your principles? Or are you acting like a wild man, right? Or are you acting kind? Or are you acting out of control, right? So if you were yourself, watching yourself all day, right? Because it's very easy for us to go and act without really having any accountability. But if you are actually watching yourself, are you being self-aware of how you're showing up? What are the words you're using? What are you're having? What are your actions, right? Are you doing the 3 important things or 5 important things that are important to your day to drive you forward? How are you around your family, right? And when you really sit with yourself and you really are evident and just self-aware about how your words and your actions are being carried forward, then you can say you can own it, because that's the piece of the puzzle, right? You can know you're acting like a crazy person, but not own it. Just say, it's everybody else's fault. Well, I was raised in a certain way, or my boss is really horrible at work, or did you see how those persons treat me? You can make up a million excuses, but when you can own it, you can now create that channel of saying, okay, here's where I am right now. Here's how I'm showing up. I'm showing up angry, right? I'm showing up with disgust. I'm showing up with hatred, right? I'm greedy, right? I'm not self-serving, right? I'm not a person. I'm not being kind in my own self. To myself could be one way, but even to those around me. Yeah. But the person I want to be shows up with integrity, shows up with kindness, shows up. It's a person that says what they're going to do and then goes and does it, right? That carries forward with their word, right? The person I want to be. And that leads you to position yourself for greatness. Okay, so what is the difference from the person you are right now and the person you want to be? Because that's the person that's sitting over there watching right now. That's the person you want to be. What is the difference? And then you can make an action plan to start becoming that person day in and day out, slowly but surely, by changing the actions, changing the patterns, changing the habits. And that provides you with the solution to get what you want in life.
It's interesting that when you say break, it's not necessarily break. It sounds like it's almost like a breakthrough. Because I hear a lot about emotional intelligence and understanding yourself. And I didn't really do that until I was probably in my 50s. And I'm 68 now. And I've just started reading Extreme Leadership, which I wish I read a long time ago. But Jocko and Leaf, I'm just getting started. And they're talking about this whole responsibility thing in leadership and taking full responsibility. So it really resonates with me, the second stage of what you've got in this break piece. But can you dive a little bit deeper? What was the tipping point? What was whack across the head? I mean, you got out of the hospital and you thought, I'm angry, and yet I'm going to go do the same thing again. Was that kind of where you had the awakening, where you were like, man, this way's not working. I need to go in a different direction? Because there's so many people out there that can say EQ. They can say, knowing myself. And there's a lot of them that don't pay any attention to it at all. But what is that moment? What was that moment for you? And what do you see that with your clients where they wake up and it's not being able to read the words? There's a deeper comprehension that, wow, I need to do something different. I need to pivot.
So as mentioned earlier, I'm a stubborn Italian, right? So I probably took about 6 or 7 2x4s through the head before it made sense. You don't all have to go through this point where you have to have all these down moments. It could be anything. Like if you're having mediocre success or average success, why not have a fantastic life? Like what's stopping you right now? And sometimes it's the comfort of mediocrity, right? But, I had the car accident. I was in a, when you're having crazy actions and living in a crazy life, like you get in bad relationships. So I was in a relationship that wasn't serving me. I had a point where I had some money saved away in a place I thought was safe, and I had that stolen. Like I just had all these things that were happening. That part, it's like, when all the signs are flashing and you're just somehow just not open your eyes. And then one day you just say, you know what? I have to try something different, but you don't know what to do. And so all I did was say, what am I doing right now? And just purely do the opposite. Stop staying up late at night. Stop, drinking, and that's part, right? Stop going to bars after work. Stop, doing these X, Y, and Z. Get up at a set time each day. Start to put back a workout pattern into your day. Start to read again, right? Like after school, I was like, you know what? I'm done with reading. How fantastic, right? Like these things that you sound crazy today, right? But you say them at the moment and they sound logical, because when you're doing crazy things, you can say crazy stuff and it can sound logical to you because you can convince yourself. And so when you talk through the breakthrough, it is absolutely right, because most people in life want to go to the build. Right now, I'm dejected and, I'm out of money, have less than $1,000 in my bank account. I'm in a bad relationship. My car's broken down, but I want to start building success. And they don't look at, okay, well, how did you get to there? What are the things that have led you to this part of not having success? Because if you just go and try to build success, right, it's like trying to go and you have a chair, right, and the chair has 2 legs. And you're like, okay, I'm just going to sit down and hopefully it will hold. Well, that's what many of us do. We just want to build. We want to go and magnify, greatness, but we're not actually looking at the core principles of what values do we need to stand on, right? What are the things that we need to do right now to fix what's broken? Because when you start to do that point of just adjusting where you are, typically you're not far off, and you usually have one of typically 3 directions. Well, actually, I'll give a 4th. The 4th is do nothing. And do nothing, and that means you're probably going to continue to get some aspect of what you have today. The next is take a step, right? And you take a step and it's the absolute wrong direction. Oh man, that was a horrible wrong direction, completely fine. At least we know that doesn't work. And now we can set our tone and go in the opposite direction or changing where it was. Next is you take a direction and it's not wrong, not right, but it's somewhere in the middle. Okay, what did we learn from this step? And then we can go and we can treat it accordingly to pivot in the right direction. Or it's the right, you take a step, goes very well. You take the next one, you start building, you start really getting momentum because you're on a path that's now growing. Okay, fantastic. But they can all lead in that way, right? You can all lead in that direction, but you have to take the action to get out of your own way. And usually the first piece is breaking it down. We usually want to take too big of a step. It's like we're trying to step off a 10-story building when we just really need to step off a curb. And that's usually the piece of the puzzle. You give people, say, well, I want to have X. Okay, well, what is the first step? And if we can label the first step, it takes away the fear, it takes away all these things that are in our mind are telling us why this is impossible because we've never done it before. So how in your mind could it be possible if you've never done it before? But if we say anything, a simple part, I want to lose 20 pounds, I want to make $1 million, right? I want to go write a book. Okay, well, what is that first step? What is that first step we can do right now? Because not only does it break the pattern of you telling yourself you can, but it also starts to get you momentum. But it now gives you the questions to ask to get you to the next step. Because we're seeking the answer, well, we just need to get better questions. And you get better questions by doing. And when you do that, you find that logically things start to work in your favor. Most of the times the goals we go after, you can look at it any way. The goal transforms itself, right? If you say, okay, today, like I went from buying a house and I'm going to fix it up, right? To owning Airbnbs, to starting to flip land and wholesale developments, to buying large apartments for which we own over 3,500 apartment units now. But if I just said, you know what, real estate, I'll go buy, I didn't even know it existed when I started the process of buying apartment communities. But what happened is I took one step into real estate, which led to the next step, which led to the next step, which led to the next discovery, which led to me to meet more people, to answer my better questions, and equip myself with more knowledge, which led me into a space that really aligned with what I wanted to go after. But it started by the action, and the action led to the results, not the hope for the perfect route that led to the results.
I agree with everything you're saying, except I want to back it up.
Sure.
So I want to go back more and sit, and this is because of my own mistakes. Okay. There had been many times when I was younger where I went after the 10-story building instead of taking a step off the curb. Okay. And a lot of regrets, a lot of mistakes. How do you, I would like to bring up 2 things. And by the way, I love it that you're Italian. My grandfather's best friend was Joe Tarantino. He was like family to us. Uncle Joe was phenomenal. So I automatically like Italians. I didn't know that about you, Jason, but now you're my new best friend. So
fantastic.
Yeah. Talk to me about this. It's like you need a new compass, you need a new rudder, but how did you pause long enough to start to understand yourself? And then talking about the recipe here for change, who did you get involved in your life or more involved in your life where you were either just hanging out with healthier people or there was some mentoring or coaching going on that gave you some additional perspective to build on what you were learning?
Many times in life, there's a lot of people around us And it's hard to filter out the noise of who's there to just, love us, but they might be giving us bad advice or, not giving us horrible advice, is giving us great advice. And that's the hardest thing, right? That's the hardest thing to say, okay, who should I listen to? And many times we listen to the people like, if you want to go start a business today, and then your uncle comes over at Memorial Day and he's like, that is the stupidest thing I've ever heard. Why would you go out there and take that risk? But the guy's worked in the same factory for 40 years. Is that really, the best guy to listen to? Because on that point, he's got his mind set on just how the world looks, right? So you have to be careful of just really protecting the information that comes into you. And that's a hard thing to do, especially when you're young, right? When you're especially go out there. But you should listen to all opinions. It's good to learn opinions, but then you have to start being careful to form your own. Many adjustments that we make during coaching is that people will make goals that aren't really their goals. And what it means is that they find that through society, through their friends, through social media. I mean, that's a big one, right? You see these things that other people have, but you don't really want that, but you think you should want that. And so you're kind of one foot in the water, but really not in the water. And you're trying to say, I want to go after this. But when you break down the why, like, what am I trying to get to? Then you can get down to the core reasons of what you really need. Like I see it a lot in real estate is that people say, well, I want to buy 1,000 apartments. And you're like, okay, well, why? And it's just like a number that they've heard out there that everybody else says that sounds good, but there's no basis. And you break it out and you say, okay, what are we trying to get to? Well, I'm trying to get to a point where, I can replace my wife's salary. Okay, now we have something really good to work to. And you might find that going through that, you need 45 units. If we acquire 45 units, we can go and realistically replace your wife's salary, bring her out of the workforce, right? And then in that part, you can be home more to take care of the kid, and it can be something that can really be beneficial for everyone. And when you do that, then you create something that's real. And when you're young, you're just trying to go after these big goals without a real basis to them. The hardest thing is to be honest with yourself. Do I really want this? And a way you can look at this is you can write down your perfect life. If you looked at your perfect life 1 year from now, or 5 years from now and wrote down one page, where would you be doing? And don't write, you're going to be on a beach, another part. Maybe that sounds good for a day, maybe for a week, but most of us who are listening to this podcast right now are out there, we're doers. We like doing. We like going out there building companies. We like going out there growing. We like going out there schooling. We like there improving, right? So we're probably not going to be happy just going there and lying there for 10 hours a day, for the rest of our life. We're going to go out there and do something. So how does that look into the future? What does your company look like? What does your day and your activities look like?
No, I think that's great. Now, I've had some people that I've coached say, Dave, I can't figure out whether you're my coach or you're my shrink. Man, so how much do you get into, because you're alluding to it and you've kind of mentioned a little bit, but who do you want to be? Do you guys get into that much? Because a lot of these, when I was young, it was just like, yeah, I want to go jump up to that 10-story building. But who do you want to be? What type of character do you want to display? Who do you want to be with your family, with these other people? Do you get much into that? Because isn't that one of the cornerstones of where they want to go and how they want to get there, and et cetera?
You have to understand where you're trying to get to, right? With reason, it's going to change, adapt. And as you grow, right, what might sound good in your 30s changes in your 40s, it changes in your 50s and changes in your 60s and so on, right? Just like it changes in your 20s and your 30s, right? But if you can think about two ways, like, what does my life look like? Who am I as a person, right? And then what do you want my life to feel like? I have a 10-year-old and I asked him the other day, like, Luke, when you get older, how do you want your life to feel? And he said, exciting. I was like, that's a great word. That's great, right? Yeah, but many of us, right, if you think about that, if I ask the same person when they're 20 or 30 or 40, you might get a completely different reaction. What would be important for a feeling in your life when you're 40? It might be like safety, right? If you're having a hard time with money or bad in relationships and all this other part, that might be the word, because that's what's been conditioned into our life. But if you said, okay, if you had that today, what would the next 10 years look like, right? Where would you go? What would that feeling be? And it can be really helpful for us to solve that reason, right? Many times in real estate, we're trying to underwrite and we're trying to solve to what's going to be the metrics we're trying to seek, right? And can we solve to that? Can we solve to this IRR, right? But we have to think that in our life, like, if I'm solving to happiness in 10 years, what is that going to look like? Because right now, if I'm not happy, it would be crazy to think that if I keep doing the same thing and just pounding each day, that ultimately I'm going to be happy, right? Even if, like, you're building this business, you're doing all these great things and you're going to have this big exit at the end. But if you just hate your life right now, do you think, like, when you get there and you sell your company for, $5 million, $10 million, $20 million, are you going to be able to be happy at that moment? And the answer is probably unlikely, because you're not building into yourself what you like to do, what you want to be now. So how do you just going to automatically turn the switch and be happy just because something happens? And usually we set up the future events as that when I get married, when I buy a house, when I, get that job, or when I write that book, then X happens. And that's just not how life works.
Yeah. And I'm struck actually by your son's comment. Exciting. And I heard a great conversation with Seth Godin recently where he talked about, you need to be remarkable. He's not on any social media, but he wants to be so good, and he recommends that you be so good that people remark about you. And so other people post on social media about him. But you think about, Jesus taught, be loving. If you want people to know that you're a follower of mine, be loving. So you could choose. I really like the concept of, although I'm not sure you're saying it specifically, but if you choose one word and then build a simple definition of that, whatever it may be, that's a simple, I really like that approach. Well, continue walking us through this break, build, and magnify. I'm very intrigued by it.
So we've touched on break, and break is really, the most important thing. You can't get the build if you can't break, right? You can't be self-aware about how you're showing up. And then you can't say, okay, listen, I am showing up in a way that is not self-serving of me or others around us. And then own that, right? If you can, okay, I am owning it, right? I get it. I'm not. And you can just turn it back on you. Because many times it's so easy to point outwards, right? It's so easy to just blame someone else. And I'm not saying, other people don't do things. I hear it, right? But you have to take some onus that you're putting yourself in a position right now by choices, by feelings. And when you own that and you put yourself there, then you can start doing a positioning in a way that can start leading you down a new path. Okay. And when you do that, then we can move ourselves into the build. The build is mastering habits and rituals. Those are rituals that are going to serve you now, right? So for me, a big thing was I started waking up very early. I started working up at 4:32 a.m., 4, 3, 2, 1, go, and just get out of bed. And what that did is I'd wake up in the dark when all my kids were sleeping, my wife's asleep, and I would just take a moment for myself, right? I'd take a moment, I'd have a glass of water, I'd meditate, and then I'd go to work out. And then when I get back, my wife would be waking up my kids, and I could be present with them instead of just rush into this moment. And I would just have this, you can think of it, a calm before the storm, or just a moment of just peace within yourself, and have that moment to go pray, meditate, do the things that can put your mind in a state where you feel at ease. Because so many of us, you wake up late, you hit the snooze button, right? You rush out of bed, you're like, oh man, you're all frazzled. You just grab something, because you're late for work. Maybe you have your family home and you rush. You just say, I gotta go. You get stuck in traffic, right? And it's just, the whole day is just a train wreck, because by the time you get to work, there's one emergency after the next, and, traffic on the way home. Then you're sitting there, you're like, man, this was a crazy day. You sit down with a beer, watch Netflix, and you just repeat that for a decade or two. And you're just like, what is going on? But each day you're saying, I'm never going to do this again until tomorrow. And when you can take that moment to just get the pause, well, then it brings me into a state, I walk in, we have a number of businesses, and there's always things going on that are outside of the direction that we thought the day would go, right? But now I can be mentally prepared to not treat everything like a level 10, right? You can say, okay, you can have a clear conscious, a clear mind to go and be in a position to not only just help the business forward, but just help my life forward, but also help the team to be able to provide good solutions.
Yeah. And I love the pause. So the pause, I'm very type A driven, and a lot of people I work with are that way. The pause is where the struggle is. So I love the way you talked about habits. I emphasize systems, because the epiphany I had back in February 2003 was I had leadership attributes, but no skills. And my biggest weakness was no systems. So I was inconsistent. So I love what you're talking about, that you got a habit and you're building in time for those pauses, and not just yourself. You brought up with the family. Particularly when you have young kids.
Yeah.
But even when they get to be teens, staying close. Of course, you're Italian. You're going to be close. You may be very vocal, but you're going to be close.
That's right.
In your troubles, you probably never felt unloved, because that love was in your face in a very, well, maybe it wasn't that healthy, but it was healthy in intention.
I want to make sure I touch back on a point. So we touched a little bit on mentorship. One of the things that I did is I almost went the opposite, is I closed myself off for a while, because, we do have that habit, right? Sometimes we can be stubborn Italians, and it's not that part, but I do better when sometimes I can go in a silo and just make sure that I'm really being focused on what I want to achieve. And that leads into the build category, right? We have the mastering habits and rituals. We have intentional execution, right? That's setting up what you talked about, systems, about how to execute them. And then it leads us into me uncomfortably brave. And the part about that is that many times when you make change, you're around people that are used to you for how you've been showing up, what you've been doing, where you are, right? It could be anybody. It could be, your friends, it could be your family, it could be people at work. They're so used to you being that same person. And so they may criticize, or they may try to help you to just get back to the person you don't want to be. Many times, like, they're giving you feedback. It's not because they're trying to put you in a bad place, but we've taken it like that, right? Like, your parents might be like, you should just go be a doctor. Like, you don't want to do that, but like they think they're trying to help you or take care of you, right? Not to put you in a bad spot, but sometimes you get feedback from people that aren't truly understanding where you're trying to go. And so you have to be careful just to not be offended by that feedback. Or you can put yourself in a position to just start making change on your own, to adjust your own patterns, right? To adjust your own North Star, and then slowly bring back the right people into your life. And that's fine too. For me, that worked better to just close off channels and really focus on just getting myself in an order that and I wouldn't say happy with, because I don't think that's the goal. You don't want to go, oh, well, I'm finally good enough at that point. That's not what we're trying to say here. It's just trying to say that you have a different vision of where you want to go, and you start showing up like that.
Well, and I love the fact that I've become very introverted as I've gotten older, which doesn't show because I lead a podcast and I'm in sales. But I love people. And I've found that I do need that quiet time to think.
Yeah.
And I love the fact that you talk about trying things in small steps, stepping over the curve versus 10-story building. So it sounds like what you're recommending, which I think is very wise, is you choose those people that you want to bring back in your life, but you bring them back in small steps. So you bring them back with boundaries that, like, hey, we're going to play in this zone, but we're not going past these boundaries, or else
You might have a lot,
but I'm in.
who are, they're great in certain seasons. And like, it could be like, there's people that you love playing basketball with, but then you go out and you get real drunk with, right? And you say, okay, well, they're really good friends to play basketball with, but then if you just kept them in that part, you find yourself in a place where you're going out drinking too much. Doing all the things you're trying to get yourself away from. You say, okay, does that mean I have to discard them as a friend? No, but you have to start to choose the areas that you have them in your life. And it's not that you don't like them, you do like them. But you're making changes, and those changes come with sacrifices. Changes are not easy. That's why we have 92% of New Year's resolutions fail. It's not because everybody doesn't want to do it. It's because everybody wants to do it, but they're not willing to change the little things that make them feel comfortable. And when the people show up and make those changes, that's when you see these huge transformations. That's when you see things get made in this world. That's when you see creativity. That's when you see people break records. That's when you see people go out there and just change the course of their life, is that they're no longer satisfied with the past in such a way that they will be hell-bent if they don't start making progress in a different direction and repeatedly doing it each and every day, whether they feel like it or not.
Yeah. And also, when you let those friends back in that you like playing basketball with, if you find that playing basketball with them, you can't say no, and you go out drinking with them anyway, you got to have the boundary that, well, I guess we can't play basketball with them. I mean, when I was in my early 30s, I had lost a best friend to alcohol, and I had a couple other people that lives were just falling apart due to alcohol, at least 2 or 3. And I had alcoholics in my family line, not my immediate family, but farther back. I just realized, I stink at this. I don't drink well. I drink, I don't sit, and I don't have great tolerance. So I just stopped. Cold turkey, because I find that that's the way I have to be. I have to done. I love what you're saying. So we got break, we got build, and then talk to me about Magnify.
It's actually a really good point, because you talked about friends. Like, you go through seasons in your life where you have new people come into your world, and you at the point, like, you don't have to hold on to the past for the sake of holding on to the past, right? There's people that have been very beneficial in life. It's great to keep in touch with them. It's great to have that rapport, but you're going to go on new adventures. Like, if exciting is your life, you're going to have new things that come into your world that are going to be awesome to see. And so you don't have to hold on to it. And many times we're trying to hold on to our past life while creating our new life. But there's nothing that said you have to hold on to your past life, right? There's nothing to say that you have to hold on to those moments. Now, it's always going to be ingrained in you, and you learn from this. We would be silly if we went through all the days and just tried to forget our past, because the past is what put us on this route here.
Oh, yeah.
Do I wish those things happened in my childhood and have all these losses? No, absolutely not. I just saw, the pain, I saw the hurt and saw the parts, but it gave me a perspective on just, many things in life that I look to today, and just, you can understand how valuable it is. I think of, some of my little kids are right around the age of some of these kids were lost. Like, it's just like this part, I think about how valuable things can be in our day, and just, we act like we have these lives that go on for forever. But if you look in the scale of the universe, I mean, we're here for just, a pin drop, right? We're here for just a little bit of time. And so when we look at that, we can be really try to be useful. Now, can I say every day is pigeon in? I'm dialed in every single moment? No, absolutely not. But, I make intention that when I come here, I'm really trying to make the most of the time when I'm putting the work in. Because I don't want to waste time. Like I said, I have 3 little kids. I coach their teams, right? I have 5 businesses, right? I have to make sure that when I'm here, I'm getting something done. It's not here, okay, let me go, waste 4 hours while I'm at work with social media, and then all of a sudden I can't go do this thing with my kid, or can't make this responsibility because now I actually have to do the work because I'm against a wall. And it's the same thing with your life, right? When you go there with your life, you have to put in the work to make the change. The change doesn't come and then you put the work, right? And that's usually what we want. We want the change to come, and when I get this, then I'll do the work. No, that's not how it works. You do the work, and you don't know when the change is going to come. But if you do the work, you're going to be in a better place than you were when you didn't do the work. That's all we can guarantee, right? If you do the work, I don't know when you're going to, be in the shape you want, but you're going to feel better, right? You're going to do something different. You're going to be in a different place than you were. Fantastic. And so when we talk about the magnify, is that the break is changing the patterns where we were. The build is building the new recipe of who we become. And the magnify is when now you've built the process that really works, and there's no reason to stop you. You can go and pour fuel in the fire. You can go out there and really push the boundaries of what's possible with you, because now you have everything churning in the right direction. But many times we want to magnify success without actually having the true understanding of who we are, and then the recipe that we use to build ourselves to magnify. So that really leads us into just a level of growth where we don't have to hold ourselves back anymore. Because we don't do a lot of things in our life because we're just not certain. But when you start building something you're happy with, you can do it 10 times over compared to the one time you're done before, because now you really believe in it. You believe in what you're doing. You believe in how you show up. And that can be anything, right? It could be, faith-driven, right? It could be how you go out there and preach the word, how you help other people, find their faith. It could be fitness, go out there and start, running long distance races, right? It could be in your business. You have one business that's going fantastic on autopilot. You now acquire 5 more businesses, right? Within a year, when you've just had the one business for 1 year, right? You can look at, or for 5 years, right? You can look at many different things that you can do to start magnifying your life when you have the recipe that you're happy with, that makes you fulfilled.
I like what you're saying. And the more that you succeed, the more opportunities come across your path. Do you also teach a way on how to prioritize things? Because there's certain seasons. You brought up coaching your kids. You really get certain seasons to do that, certain years to do that. By the way, I'll pass along something I learned because I coached soccer for, 15 years. I refereed for 8 and, had a lot of fun in different coaching and being involved in sports. But if you want to, how you tell a great youth coach?
Tell me. I'd love to hear.
Watch them when they're losing. If they're screaming at their players, if they're chewing them out, if they're getting mad, that's not a great coach. There was a guy, Harry Miller. He coached an under 12 team, competitive team every year in Pleasanton, California. Big bear of a guy. And he had practices for 1 hour and 15 minutes, 5 days a week. He said they can't keep their attention span beyond that. But he would give his team their instructions, send them out on the soccer field, and he wouldn't say a thing.
That's correct.
He would, if a kid was just totally messing up, he would sub him out and he would talk to him.
Yeah.
Winning or losing. And he might say a few compliments, but he never said a thing. And I asked him about it. And he said, if they don't know how to play the game when they're out there, it's not going to help for me to yell at them.
That's right.
I want them to learn the game and be able to play the game, and I'll reinforce what they're doing right. But no, I'm not going to be one of these guys yelling. He actually sat back from the sidelines.
That's good.
Anyway, watch for that, man.
It's reasonable. You can prepare them as much. It's like many times it's like a director for a play, right? They don't direct during the play, right? To prepare during the rehearsal. Then they go and perform the play. And it's that point where, and that's a lot with, you can relate that just to that point with like someone who doesn't understand their role on the soccer field. If you're just screaming out there and they don't understand the role, well, it's not like they're going to magically understand it now. And that's how we feel in life is like, lots of times we're in this chaos and then we want to just take in this great feedback. Someone has said, go make this investment, and then you lose all your money, but you just like go and make this investment when you have no idea about understanding that investment. You have no understanding of what your goals are, what you're investing, right? You have all these points where you're just doing things because someone else said something in the midst of your chaos, and you're like, wow, I don't know and understand why that went wrong. Well, yes, you do, because it meant nothing with what you're actually seeking.
That's consistent with The Richest Man of Baghdad, an old book.
Yeah. Well, you asked a question about how to prioritize.
Oh, and the biggie.
Yeah, it gets back to the block, right? If you get back to this point here, is that your goal was not to say yes to everything, it's saying no to everything, right? Your goal is to only say yes to what's actually going to be crucial for you. Like, look at Warren Buffett, reads about 8 hours a day, right? Rarely goes and makes an investment. But he's put so much information in his mind that when he makes an investment, it typically is on the right side more than wrong, because he spent all this time shielding himself for all the things he doesn't want to do just to get to the thing he wants to do, right? So you have to look at it.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, what is the vision, right? We said, who is the person I want to become? What do I want to do? What is the person I'm trying to become and seek, right? So if I'm asked to do X, Y, and Z, do any of these fit that? Right? If I'm going to be a real estate investor and someone comes and asks me to go and invest in a restaurant and to become a restaurateur, does that meet what I'm trying to do? No. Okay, well, then say no. But usually we spend so much time trying to filter it out. And I'll give you a pretty quick real estate analysis, is that when people come in and want to buy apartment communities, where I feel and I find that they struggle the most is that when they're open to buy everything, right? So if they'll buy, hey, will you buy a 12-unit condo building? Yes. Will you buy a mobile home park? Yes. Will you buy a new construction 300-unit? Yes. Will you buy a Class D war zone property? Yes. But what happens there is they don't know what to look for. Will you buy it all across the country? Absolutely. So when they get opportunities sent to them, they can't tell the good from the bad because they have no idea what the area is like. They have no idea how the property operates because they all operate in different silos. They have no idea how to underwrite it. They have no idea how to treat the expenses. They have no idea the actual comps. But when someone comes in there and says, I just buy a 75 to 100, 150 units that are built between 1970 to 1985, and I only buy in South Louisville, and I only look for workforce housing. Well, usually the reticular activator starts kicking in. They start to understand the model. They start to go and be able to find those opportunities, and they get quicker to the success because they actually know what they're looking for. And it's a lot of times what we treat with our goals is that we wouldn't know our goal if it hit us in the head because we don't actually know what the goal is. So how are you going to know if you reached the goal if you don't know what the goal you're seeking?
It's awesome. Jason, you have given the audience a tremendous amount of value here. And I think that it's like drinking water out of a fire hose. Where should they go to learn more about specifically what you do and how you can help them?
Sure. So I gave you 3 easy resources. First is I have the Live 100 podcast. It's a very quick hit, 6-7 minutes. I try to get in there with just 1 point. It's just straight from me, 6 to 7 minutes. It's 2 times a week. You can find it on all the other podcast platforms, or you can go over to jasonyarusi.com. There's a free ebook, very easy read. I think it's like 15 pages of just breaking through. And there's also a self-assessment, a free self-assessment. You can go and just answer some questions, right? If you want to get an understanding of how you are showing up in the moment, you can answer the questions in that self-assessment and give you a pretty good read of just how you're feeling in certain moments and get a true indication of where you need to go from there.
Jason, where are we going to see you in 5 to 10 years?
My goal right now is two-handed. I'm Italian, but my wife is Hawaiian, right? And so our goal here...
That's perfect.
Beautiful for the family and everything else.
I've got Italy and I've got Maui or Hawaii anyway. So
yeah.
Sorry I interrupted you.
No, it's perfect. Well, her majority of her family, almost all of her family, her mom, dad, her sisters, all her brother, all of her aunts, uncles, with few exceptions, still live in Hawaii. We'll actually be visiting them again in 2 weeks, but we're looking for property there so we could spend a portion of the summer there, right? And then we have a farm here that we love and we continue to expand here. We have a number of buildings we've acquired over the course of the last 9 years that are in and around Middle Tennessee. So we're looking to get to a certain level. The quote is a certain number of complex that we own the majority of here. So that can just be a rinse and repeat cycle that will continue to operate from here. And then allow our kids to just be at the great school. They're at a great Christian school here in Middle Tennessee. Allow them to continue for their next 5 or 10 years. They'll be in the cusp of being in middle school, being in high school, and seeing them grow up to be fine young men and women as they are.
That is awesome. That is awesome. I love it. Well, I encourage everyone, go to jasonyarusi.com. Check out what Jason's doing. There's some good things for you to consider here. It can be life-changing. And Jason, I thank you so much for being on the show.
David, it's been a lot of fun. Thank you.